I heard a voice telling me to wake up, but it sounded so far away. A young boy was standing over me in a lavish room, begging me to open my eyes. He looked desperate, screaming for me to wake up. Then, a sharp pain snapped me back to reality. He'd just slapped me right across the face. I sat up, completely stunned that someone had just hit me out of nowhere like that. The boy called me young Master Lucian and pleaded with me to get a hold of myself. I stared back at him, my mind racing as I tried to figure out what the hell just happened. Lucian wakes up in a massive, luxury bed. But he's not alone. Some kid is kneeling on the floor, crying his eyes out. He looks down at his hands, and honestly, something feels really, really wrong. His old hands were rough, torn up, and covered in scars from years of fighting. But these are soft, clean, and look like they belong to some pampered young master who's never done a day of work. The kid is still bawling, clutching at the blankets like it's the end of the world. He's acting like Lucian just rose from the grave, screaming about how his heart nearly stopped. Hans starts blabbering about how he would have been punished if Lucian died, and how it would have been a tragedy for the house. Lucian just stares at him, wondering what kind of nonsense this brat is spouting. Not a single word the kid is saying has anything to do with his actual life. He knows for a fact he died back then so thoroughly that nobody could have possibly saved him. He's still trying to figure out how his head is even still attached to his neck. Looking at his reflection in his mind, he realizes there's only one real conclusion. He somehow ended up inside some stranger's body. He hops out of bed and catches his reflection, and damn, this kid has a killer face. He's definitely got that noble aura oozing out of him. The entire room is draped in gold and luxury. This family practically smells like money. He needs more information before he does anything else. Hans snaps to attention the second he's called, ready to answer whatever his young master needs. Lucian asks what year it is, which just makes the kid think he's still loopy from medicine. Hans tells him it's Imperial Year 846, and Lucian's eyes go wide. That's 15 years before the day he died. He didn't just swap bodies. He went back to the past. He tells himself to keep it together. Freaking out over every little thing won't help. He focuses back on the kid for the next round of questions. He asks Hans if he woke up today wanting to die, which immediately sends the kid into a panic. He towers over the boy, asking how a lowly attendant dared to touch his master's body without permission. He demands to know if the rules of this house changed while he was unconscious. Then he drops the big one. Who am I? Hans drops to his knees, begging for forgiveness and claiming he just lost his head. He shouts it out. His name is Lucian Valdec, third son of the great house Valdec. Lucian just stares. The realization is hitting him hard. He repeats the name to himself. Valdec? That's a noble house that has basically carried the empire on its back for ages. They're a prestigious family serving right at the emperor's side, with power almost equal to the royals themselves. And the weirdest part? He actually knows this house pretty well. Because 15 years from now, House Valdec was the place where he worked for years as a guard. Now he wakes up after dying, only to find out he's their third son. In his past life, his low birth meant he had to eat every kind of crap the world could throw at him. He spent his whole life in the shadows, covered in blood and mud. He looks at his reflection, wondering why he's being given this kind of second chance. He wonders just how far he could have climbed if he'd had this kind of starting position before. He decides to take the chance and show the world what he's truly made of. He opens the windows wide, ready to see just how far he can go in this new life. He's determined to make the most of this second chance and see exactly how far he can go. He starts exploring the Valdec estate. It's a massive upgrade from the places he saw as a mercenary. The interior is just on another level of fancy, with gold and fine carvings everywhere you look. He tells himself he needs to get used to this luxury as soon as possible if he wants to play the part. He keeps a sharp eye out, trying to stay composed despite the transition. As they walk, he notices the servants whispering behind his back, shocked to see him actually leaving his room. The way they're all staring at him feels predatory, like he's some kind of outsider in his own home. He asks Hans if the hostility is just his imagination, but the kid tells him the truth. Apparently the original Lucian had been shut away in complete isolation for over a year. He wonders what was so wrong with the kid that he spent 14 months hiding from the world. In a house this strict, he knows that kind of behavior shouldn't have been tolerated for a single day, especially not with the man who runs this whole empire-protecting family, Archduke Sigmund. There's no way a guy that powerful would just sit back and let his own son rot away in a bedroom. Either the Archduke gave up on him entirely, or there's a much darker reason he was being ignored. Whatever it is, he decides it's best to avoid the old man for as long as he possibly can. But his luck runs out immediately when a distinguished butler blocks their path, delighted to see him out. He recognizes the guy Edwin, the head butler who practically runs the entire household. Edwin actually started out as a hostage from a rival house, but his talent was so undeniable he rose to the top. He's the Archduke's right-hand man, and he's got the sharp eyes to match the reputation. This is the absolute last person he wanted to run into while he's still figuring out his story. He realizes Edwin hasn't seen him in a year, which gives him a tiny bit of breathing room. To survive this, he decides to channel the most noble person he ever met and put on the performance of a lifetime. He puts on a polite, shallow smile and thanks Edwin for his concern. He keeps the act going, telling the butler he's finally recovered thanks to everyone's care. He explains that, after being cooped up so long, he just wanted to see how the estate was holding up. Edwin seems to buy it, smiling back and mentioning how glad he is to see the young master in good health. Lucian layers on the charm, saying that with Edwin guarding the place, nothing could possibly go wrong. He tries to make a quick exit, waving goodbye and hoping he can just slip away back to his room. But the butler's voice stops him dead in his tracks. Edwin tells him he's going to have to delay his return for just a little bit longer. His expression shifts to something cold and professional as he says someone is waiting for him. Lucian breaks into a cold sweat, realizing exactly who that someone is. He's led into a massive, intimidating office where a man sits at a desk like a god on a throne. It's the man himself, Archduke Sigmund, the head of the house. The Archduke glares at him with a glowing golden eye and drops a chilling question. How are you still alive? Lucian blinks, feeling the heavy silence in the room. Archduke Sigmund Valdec's voice is cold, stating he was willing to overlook Lucian's past behavior. He mentions Lucian using his mother's death as an excuse to ignore his duties. Sigmund's hand grips the chair arm tight. Lucian has officially crossed the line. Sigmund stands firm, accusing him of trying to throw his own life away. We see the original Lucian, a kid who was literally crying out for help. Lucian tries to stutter out a response, but the old man isn't having it. He tells Lucian to quit hiding and just spit out whatever is in his heart. The accusation is heavy apparently. Lucian tried to drug his own father with sleeping pills. Lucian's eyes widen as a piece of the puzzle finally clicks into place. He realizes why his memories of the original Lucian are so messed up. Years ago, a guard remembered this estate having a third son, but that kid was already dead. He didn't survive his original attempt. The Archduke is a man of many responsibilities and even more sons. He has 4 of them, each from a different mother, creating a constant power struggle. The other brothers were always visible, fighting for their place in the family. But Lucian and his mother were always kept in the dark, away from everyone. His mother died young, leaving the kid all alone in a cold house. And shortly after, Lucian followed her to the grave for reasons no one understood. People just assumed they were weak, but Lucian sees the truth now. The isolation and lack of family standing was just too much for a child to handle. He took those pills, hoping it would finally get Sigmund's attention. But after a year of rotting in his room, his body was too weak to handle the dose. The pills fell from his hand as he just died. Current Lucian realizes the Archduke was incredibly harsh on a kid who was just desperate. But he also realizes the old man is probably hurting in his own way. Still, if he doesn't fix this now, he's going to be exiled for good. He can feel his golden future starting to crack and crumble. Best case, he gets sent to a monastery to spend his life as a priest. Worst case, he's sent north to freeze and fight beasts for the rest of his days. He grins. There's no way he's letting family drama ruin the easy life ahead of him. He shifts gears instantly, bowing low with a perfect, sincere apology. The steward stares in shock. The change in atmosphere is night and day. Sigmund keeps a poker face, listening to his son's sudden turn of heart. Lucian asks him straight up, wouldn't it be better to just be glad he's okay? He declares that he's done being chained to the ghost of his mother. From now on, he's living for the future, not the past. The Archduke is speechless. He's never seen this kind of fire in Lucian's eyes. Lucian doubles down, talking about how a parent should embrace a repentant child. The steward is sweating. This change is almost unbelievable. He looks at Lucian, seeing none of the timid boy he used to hide from the world. Sigmund finally speaks, admitting he's lived a long time, but he's never seen anything quite like this. Lucian exhales, a bead of sweat on his face. He's thrilled his act actually worked. Sigmund looks on from his ornate throne, thinking he much prefers a fighting wild dog to a timid mouse. He notes that Lucian has come back from the brink of death, with a surprising amount of nerve. He looks down at his son, asking what he actually plans to do from here on out. Lucian places a hand on his chest and states clearly that he plans to learn the sword. Sigmund is skeptical. The sword? For a kid with a body like a paper doll? Lucian just smiles. He knows if he eats and sleeps well, he can manage to rebuild himself somehow. The Archduke turns to the steward and orders him to bring that back out for Lucian's use. The gray-haired man bows low, acknowledging his lord's command. Lucian's eyes widen. He has no idea what that is, but it sounds important. Outside, the estate is a hive of activity, with workers moving heavy loads. They're lugging around massive, iron-bound chests that look like they weigh a ton. One chest is cracked open, revealing a fortune in glittering gold coins and jewels. Lucian and Hans can only stare in disbelief at the sheer amount of wealth in front of them. And the best part? This is just his budget for a single month. With this kind of funding, Lucian realizes his plan is actually feasible. He can finally start gathering the rare ingredients for the elixir to fix his flimsy body. Later, the sun shines through the glass of a massive, peaceful conservatory. Sigmund walks through the greenery, followed closely by his faithful steward. The steward watches him, knowing this garden was once the Archduke's favorite retreat. He realizes the old man is visiting again, because he's intrigued by Lucian's sudden change. Even if Lucian briefly fell out of favor, he's still the child of the Archduchess whom the Lord loved. There was no way he'd ever truly let the boy go so easily. The steward recalls how pathetic Lucian used to be, his eyes always darting around in fear. He was like a beaten dog, whimpering the second anyone raised their voice. He used to think Lucian had only inherited his mother's beauty, and none of her spirit. But seeing the boy stand his ground today, he realizes he might have been dead wrong. Lucian didn't waver once while speaking his mind, showing a new kind of dignity. Still, the road ahead is filled with dangers that words alone won't be enough to overcome. The steward reports a problem. While support has resumed, some of the money is leaking out. Someone has cut a hole in the purse, and funds are being siphoned away from the budget. It appears Lucian's brother, Jordi Valdec, is the one pulling the strings behind the theft. Sigmund isn't worried. If Lucian can't handle a simple thief, he's not worth the effort. The blood of the house is a key, but the one who opens the door must be the person themselves. A few days pass, and life at the magnificent estate continues as usual. The maids are whispering, wondering if the young master has locked himself in his room again. Hans stands outside the door, his face a mix of determination and worry. He's relieved that the talk with the Archduke went well and the money is flowing again. But he knows things aren't easy, given how the relationship between father and son has been. To him, Lucian showed incredible courage just to fight for his place in the world. Hans starts to tear up, overwhelmed by the thought of his master resolving to move forward despite his sorrow. Meanwhile, inside the room, Lucian is gleefully playing with his mountain of gold coins. Lucian's eyes gleam with a mixture of joy and ambition. With this mountain of gold, his once impossible goal is now within his grasp. He clenches his fist, visualizing a future where his weak, flimsy body is completely transformed into one of pure strength. The key lies in a powerful elixir, a legendary concoction that he now finally has the means to create. Lucian is busy in his room, steam rising from his workspace as he works on something secret. He knows Hans is waiting outside with a ton of questions, but he appreciates that the kid is actually following orders for once. The secret ingredient is moonlight grass, a rare herb so expensive that most people don't even know how to use it. Lucian dumped his entire allowance just to secure a supply. He might look crazy now, but he knows the market price is going to skyrocket in exactly 1 year. He's counting on a massive return on his investment. We're talking 10 or maybe even 20 times what it's worth right now. He thinks back to the alchemists who had the balls to pull this off in his past life. They bought up every single blade of moonlight grass across the entire empire. It was a massive gamble that put their whole guild's future on the line. But they succeeded in brewing a unique elixir that absolutely shocked the world. Back then, people called it sacrilege to name a potion after the gods. Lucian just smirks, knowing everyone changed their tune once they realized how powerful it was. For over 1,000 years, it was an accepted truth that your strength was decided the moment you were born. It was a limit that no amount of effort could ever break. But that common sense was about to be torn to pieces. This was the drink of the gods, the only thing capable of shattering those natural barriers. To Lucian, nothing is more valuable than the glowing vial in his hand. When the empire eventually descended into chaos, the alchemists were the first ones hunted down for this recipe. The method was so dangerous that it eventually vanished from the world entirely. But using old clues, Lucian managed to recreate something that's nearly identical to the original. He doesn't hesitate to take the first sip. He's essentially drinking the pure, refined essence of nature's mana. Now he has to circulate that power through his system and draw it back in. He's using the force of the elixir to widen the blocked pathways inside his body. Usually, this process is incredibly painful as the body fights against the influx of mana. But Lucian is stunned. He's taking it in without any resistance at all. Looking at the sheer scale of the energy, he wonders if he's actually one of those geniuses people always talk about. As the sun dips below the horizon, the Archduke's estate settles into a golden twilight. Outside the training room, Hans is practically pacing a hole into the floor, looking like a nervous wreck. Lucian finally steps out, looking way too calm for someone who just survived a training session with a sword saint. The poor kid's eyes are already welled up as he asks how much longer Lucian was planning to stay in there. Hans starts bawling, explaining that he kept calling out but never got an answer. Lucian just smiles, genuinely touched that the boy actually gives a damn about him. But behind that relief, Hans is feeling a bit creeped out. This doesn't feel like the same person at all. The boy spent so much time around him that he can sense the fundamental shift in the atmosphere. Lucian knows his body hasn't changed much on the outside quite yet. He's still a bit scrawny, and fixing that is going to take a lot more than one good training session. But deep within his core, his mana is circulating and evolving at a speed that borders on impossible. Combining his old mercenary experience with this new body's raw talent is creating a monster. He's standing on the threshold of a power that could reshape the entire world. Lucian figures if he keeps this pace up, he'll surpass his old prime self in less than a year. He turns to his attendant, telling him that this success is partly his doing. Then, with a grin that's actually kind of terrifying, he tells Hans to take every last coin he has and invest it all. He strikes a dramatic pose, promising that they're going to climb all the way to the top together. Fast forward a week, and they're taking a stroll through a peaceful patch of woods. Lucian is humming to himself, looking like he hasn't had a single worry in his life. He's absolutely loving the high life, wondering why he didn't get reincarnated as a rich kid sooner. Full banquets delivered on time, every single day. It's basically heaven, and having his room cleaned spotless while he just lounges around is the ultimate luxury. In his past life, being hungry was just a standard routine he had to survive. The memory of Jake, the lowly guard he used to be, still lingers in the back of his mind. He even went through the trouble of drawing a sketch to see if he could find his old self in this era. But when he asked the guard captain, it turns out no one even remotely resembling Jake had ever applied. Lucian takes a moment to process that it's a clean slate, with no old ties to drag him down. He realizes he doesn't have the guts to face his past self anyway, so this is definitely for the best. They arrive at a massive stone hall, and Hans stops in his tracks, looking terrified for his master. He reminds Lucian that he used to hate even coming near the training grounds. Lucian just blinks, totally forgetting that his predecessor was a complete coward. Hans reminds him that ever since the second young master bullied him here, he swore never to return. The memory flashes back to a younger, smaller Lucian, getting kicked around like a ragdoll. His older brother had used sparring as an excuse to beat him until he was coughing up blood. The guy had practically traumatized the kid into never wanting to pick up a sword again. Lucian listens to the story with a neutral expression, noting that those days are long gone. He tells Hans to just trust him and follow his lead as they head inside. They step into the hall, the echoes of their footsteps ringing against the stone floor. Up on a balcony, a few staff members are gossiping, shocked that the trash master showed up voluntarily. One of them narrows his eyes, clearly remembering the fun they used to have at the boy's expense. A senior servant with a mustache smirks, planning to prepare a special meal to welcome him back. Lucian stands in the center of the arena, looking around with a smirk it's even better than he expected. He checks out the weapon racks, impressed by the sheer variety and the fact that they're built to take a serious beating. The facility is massive, giving him all the room he needs to really let loose and practice his footwork. It blows his mind that this entire place belongs to just one person. The scale of noble wealth is on a whole other level. A shadow of regret crosses his face as he thinks back to his old mercenary days. If his crew had a place like this, they might still be alive. Suddenly, a man with a mustache approaches, sounding genuinely shocked to see the third young master showing his face here. The guy introduces himself as Hendrik, greeting Lucian with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Hendrik leans in close, his voice dripping with mock nostalgia as he asks if Lucian remembers their past sessions. A memory of the original Lucian cowering in fear flashes through his mind. Hendrik clearly got a kick out of tormenting him. Lucian's eyes sharpen with a cold, predatory light as he realizes exactly who he's dealing with. A knight is often seen as the ultimate symbol of honor and loyalty. Usually born into noble families, they undergo grueling training in martial arts and etiquette from the time they can walk. They prove their worth through bloodshed on the battlefield and by completing dangerous missions. Only after all that do they finally receive their knighthood, cementing their status in the world. Lucian watches them from afar, thinking they're nothing more than expensive hunting dogs in fancy collars. One of the knights stands tall and arrogant, twirling his mustache with a smug look on his face. Lucian figures his own poor reputation, probably gives them the confidence to act this way. But mostly, they just feel untouchable, because they know the Archduke has their backs. He'd love to throw them into some intense training and fix that attitude from the ground up. But he knows if he actually did that, the Archduke wouldn't just sit there and watch. Like it or not, knights are a house's most valuable assets, and punishing them without proper cause would just create drama he doesn't need. Lucian decides to switch tactics, announcing he'll be coming around more often to learn actual sword forms. The knight just stares at him for a second before letting out a condescending laugh. He tells Lucian he's already far too late to start learning anything useful now. According to him, once you hit 16, the window for training has already slammed shut. He explains that sword forms are secret techniques that refine the body, but they require a level of insight Lucian lacks. Without the right enlightenment, the knight claims those forms are just empty shells. He leans in with a nasty grin, suggesting Lucian try becoming a professional dancer instead, since it might suit him better. Lucian stands there silently, taking the insult while the knight looks down on him. The knight is feeling pretty good about himself, thinking he's left the third young master speechless. But Lucian hits back with a correction, stating that the path of mana doesn't close until 25. Before anyone can react, Lucian reaches out and grabs Hans by the head. Hans is totally bewildered, wondering why he's suddenly being used as a prop in this argument. Lucian starts yelling that this is common sense, that even a stray dog in the street would know. He mocks the knight for having an empty skull if he's still confused about something so basic at his age. Lucian's eyes take on a chilling glow as he asks if the knight is trying to deceive the Lord's own son. The knight, whose name is Hendrik, starts stuttering, desperate to deny the accusation. Lucian doesn't let up, getting right in his face and asking if a knight of House Valdec would really stoop that low. Hendrik backs away, trembling as Lucian looms over him with sudden intensity. Lucian calls him out by name, telling Sir Hendrik that he clearly has no idea how serious this situation is. The knight is completely shaken, asking what Lucian even means by all this. Lucian admits it was his own fault for neglecting his duties and letting people look down on him, but he makes it clear that as a Valdec, he finds this level of disrespect absolutely outrageous. He points a finger at Hendrik, threatening to report this to his father so the family's discipline can be tightened. Hendrik stands there paralyzed, wondering if the kid was always this terrifying. To the knight, it feels like he's standing in the shadow of a massive predatory wolf. Suddenly, a voice rings out across the training grounds, asking what all the noise is about. Hendrik nearly jumps out of his skin, recognizing the second young master, Geordie. Lucian turns around with a sharp, calculating look, telling his brother he arrived at the perfect time. Geordie Valdec stands there looking cold and unimpressed, staring down at his younger brother. Hendrik starts fawning over Geordie immediately, trying to explain away the scene in a panic. Geordie doesn't want to hear it, raising a hand and shutting the knight up with a single word. Geordie leans in close, whispering that he saw every bit of the knight's pathetic display. He insults the man for being bullied by a child who hasn't even lived half as long as he has. Geordie grips the knight's head, telling him to fix his face before he makes the situation even more awkward for his master. Geordie carries himself like the perfect noble, but Lucian remembers his infamous temper from his past life as a guard. Since his faction is weaker than the eldest brothers, Geordie is known for recruiting many outsiders to bolster his strength. But he's ruthless, often framing his own people for crimes just to cut them off the moment they become useless. Despite the dark history, Lucian greets his brother with a sharp, dangerous smile. A gray-haired man stares down at his younger brother with a cold, judging gaze. He greets him formally, but there's no warmth in his voice. Lucian Valdec just smirks, calling him slow-witted. He isn't intimidated by the intimidation attempt at all. The older brother claims he saw everything that happened with Sir Hendrik. He heard every single word of the confrontation. Lucian just shrugs, acting completely innocent. He asks his brother to explain exactly how he supposedly disgraced the family name. The brother smiles, clearly thinking he's caught Lucian in a trap. He thinks his brother finally made a fatal mistake. He points out that the knight has shed blood for House Valdec and has a weight of loyalty that shouldn't be ignored. Then he leans in close, his face darkening. He tells Lucian that he's nothing like the loyal knights he's insulting. He pokes Lucian right in the chest, mocking him for running away from basic training while the knights put their lives on the line. He tells Lucian that he needs to learn some respect if he wants to stay part of this family. The brother gestures to the line of knights standing nearby, using them as props to make Lucian look like the bad guy. But Lucian flips the script instantly. He steps forward and loudly apologizes to everyone for the commotion, playing the role of a mature leader. The brother can't help but grin, promising to keep a very close eye on his foolish younger brother from now on. Inside, he's actually a bit impressed. He realizes Lucian's brain is working a lot faster than he ever gave him credit for. He sees exactly what Lucian is doing. He turned the insult into a display of humility to win over the knights and save his own reputation. Lucian continues the act, looking down and telling his brother that it would only be right to be scolded for his mistakes. He goes over the top, thanking his brother for the precious guidance, with a hand over his heart. He clenches a fist and shouts about how he's learning so much from his brother's kindness. It's almost too much. He even tells Hans that they need to record these teachings on the finest silk because they're just that valuable. The knights behind him look completely confused. Internally, Lucian is laughing. The old trashy version of the third young master is officially dead and gone. With his performance finished, Lucian asks for permission to take his leave. He's done here. He leans in and whispers to his brother that there's no point in them standing around anymore. They've both made their point. The brother's face turns beet red. He's furious that Lucian is just walking away after such a blatant manipulation. Lucian doesn't care. He gives a sharp look over his shoulder, reminding his brother that their father is watching closely these days. He grabs Hans and starts booking it out of there, laughing the whole way. It's a clean escape. In chibi form, Lucian drags the terrified Hans away while the brother is left fuming in the background. Sir Hendrik watches them go, looking at the brother and wondering if he's really just going to let them leave like that. The brother's eyes glow with a dark, murderous intent. He's definitely not letting this go. Once they're safe in a garden, Hans stops and asks if this is really okay. He's worried about the fallout. The poor kid starts crying, shouting that there's no way the brother is just going to let this slide. Hans is a sobbing mess, but Lucian just tells him to calm down. He's got everything under control. Lucian remembers a different time, back when he was a mercenary. He knows that feeling of being stuck under a useless superior. He knows there's nothing more infuriating than a boss who makes a mess and then just washes their hands of it. He gives Hans a gentle smile, promising that things are going to be different from now on. He promises that he won't let it happen to him. Hans looks up, his face still flushed from crying. Lucian reaches out a hand to the boy, admitting that Hans has had it rough because of him. He notes that when a master acts like an idiot, it's always the ones below who end up getting crushed. Hans stares up at him, shocked to hear such a sincere apology from his master. He can barely find his voice. Lucian looks him straight in the eye and tells him he's going to make him a promise. He vows that he won't let his people be looked down on or live in fear ever again. He offers a firm handshake to seal the deal. Lucian walks through the mansion, deep in thought. He's been wondering why things have been so quiet lately. Knowing Geordie, he isn't the type to just sit back and take a loss quietly. Something's definitely up. Lucian clenches his fist, visibly irritated. He's been waiting for this day, but not for this reason. Hans is right behind him, just as worked up. He agrees that they absolutely cannot let this situation slide. Lucian asks if Hans is ready. They're on a mission to settle a very specific score. He's absolutely livid because someone did the unthinkable. They messed with his allowance. It all started with a simple budget report he received earlier that day. He was expecting his balance to refill so he could buy what he needed, but things didn't go as planned. The report shows a massive 75% cut to Lucian's allowance, and even Hans' pay was slashed by 30%. It turns out Geordie laid his hands on the money, and he isn't acting alone. Lucian knows embezzlement is a capital crime among the nobility, but Geordie found a way around it. He reaches the door, realizing there was a gap in his own defenses that Geordie was able to exploit. After his mother passed away, Lucian had handed over the management of his budget to someone else. It used to be handled by Dana, the previous head maid who had been by his side for years. But control has shifted to a new face, a woman who doesn't look very happy to see him. She greets him with a fake smile, noting that this is their first time meeting face to face. She introduces herself as Jenny, the new head maid who took Lady Dana's place. Jenny claims she tried to introduce herself earlier, but Lucian never bothered to leave his room. She mockingly asks if he's finally finished with his long wandering. Hans snaps at her, telling her to watch her tone when speaking to the young master. Lucian calms Hans down, acknowledging that she's technically not wrong about his past behavior. He gets straight to the point, gripping the crumpled paper in his hand. He holds up the report and asks if she's the one who drafted this budget. Jenny just laughs and admits it, acting like it's no big deal. She plays the victim, claiming she's taken aback to be interrogated while just doing her job faithfully. Lucian sees right through it. He knew she'd try to use her position as a shield. He points out that the funds were supposedly moved to raise the wages for all the servants. Jenny argues that it's a form of compensation for the suffering caused by his own previous negligence. She feigns a mistake, acting like running a whole household is just too much to keep track of. She turns to the other maids, asking them to vouch for how overworked she's been. She looks the staff in the eye, silently demanding they agree with her story. The maids look terrified. They stutter out an agreement, clearly under her thumb. Lucian turns to Hans and tells him they're leaving. There's nothing more to say here. He realizes that even though this is his house, the people in it only listen to someone else. Before he walks out, Lucian leaves her with a final, chilling warning. She better answer very carefully next time. Lucian stares down with a cold expression, asking a simple question. Do you know who your master is supposed to be? Headmaid Jenny just smirks. She's not bothered at all, claiming she'd rather ask the first son, Geordie, about that. Later that night, the scene shifts to the dark, narrow alleyways of the city. Hans is tagging along in a cloak, looking pretty out of his element. He thought they were just going fishing to clear Lucian's head today. Instead, they walk into a rowdy underground fight club. People are betting their entire lives on the chaos happening in the center. In the ring, fighters are going at it with everything they've got, spurred on by the bloodthirsty crowd. Lucian isn't here to watch the fights, though. He's here for a much bigger catch. A server tries to kick them out, telling the brats to leave, while he's still being nice about it. Lucian just shrugs it off, finding it hilarious that a gambling den is being so picky about its customers. He's got his eyes set on something specific, and he's not leaving empty-handed. Thinking back, there are a few reasons he didn't just deal with Jenny right away. For starters, she isn't just some random headmaid. She's the daughter of the woman who raised Geordie, so any move against her needs to be perfect, or it'll just backfire. The hierarchy in the Valdec house is a complete disaster, with most of the staff already siding with his elder brothers. Plus, there's no way the Archduke doesn't know what's going on under his own roof. This whole situation is basically just a test to see if Lucian can actually handle himself. Fine then, if he needs to show off his skills, he knows exactly how to do it. He heads straight for the card tables and takes a seat. He starts winning. A lot. The chips are piling up fast. The other players can't believe it. This kid is absolutely cleaning house against a seasoned pro. The opponent stares at the cards in disbelief. He just lost everything to a teenager. Lucian just flips a chip with a smirk. Quitting already? Things were just getting fun. He looks around, inviting anyone else to try their luck against him. He's sitting on a mountain of chips now, completely bored. He's already cleaned them out. He kicks a stack of chips over. If he's won this much, the target should be making his move right about now. Right on time, the main doors fly open. A massive, scarred man steps into the hall, and the atmosphere immediately changes. He introduces himself as Hugo, the manager of this establishment. The staff starts bowing and telling everyone else to clear out, they're closing early today. The other guests leave, leaving only Lucian and the staff in the room. Hugo acts surprisingly polite, saying he wants to make sure young Master Lucian is enjoying his time. Lucian just smirks. He hasn't been out in a while, yet Hugo recognized him instantly. Hugo admits he's truly impressed. It's been a long time since anyone stacked up winnings like this. Then he makes his real move, asking for a chance to play against Lucian himself. Lucian just shrugs. You? Personally? You sure about that? Hugo plays it humble, claiming he's just picked up a few tricks running the place. Hans is having a total meltdown, begging Lucian to just take the money and leave. He's seen plenty of scary people at the palace, but his gut is telling him this man is on a whole different level of danger. The kid is right. Hugo's eyes are cold, the eyes of a killer who's seen the worst of the world. Lucian just smiles. He's glad Hans has such sharp intuition. It means his training wasn't wasted. This man is Black Shark Hugo, a name that's destined to shake the entire underworld with both his brutality and his cunning. After expanding his reach into smuggling and contract killings, Hugo would eventually become the Emperor of the Night, ruling the underworld across 5 territories. He'd even proclaim himself a baron, transforming into one of the most powerful and feared warlords in the entire empire. Lucian looks across the table, knowing that while this version of Hugo is still just a greenhorn, he's already a dangerous man. But Lucian didn't come here to be a victim. He came here to reel in a monster. Hugo keeps things casual for now, suggesting they settle their business with a simple card game. He flashes a fake smile, claiming he couldn't possibly bore an esteemed guest who traveled all this way just to see him. Lucian plays right along, laughing and clapping. He's thrilled to finally find someone on his level, while Hans is losing his mind in the background. To Hugo, Lucian is just another arrogant, noble brat hiding behind a famous family name. He watches the cards, certain that every word coming out of the kid's mouth is just another loop in a noose he's tying for himself. It wasn't part of the plan for Lucian to clean out his house gambler, but Hugo thinks he can handle this. He knows the type hot-headed brats who get overconfident and just sink deeper once they start losing real money. Behind that polite mask, Hugo's ready to devour this naive little brat down to the bone. He acts startled for a second, asking if there's some kind of problem when Lucian suddenly pauses. Lucian waves it off, but says there's a little question he's been dying to ask. Hugo, ever the gentleman, promises to be honest. Lucian casually shuffles the cards and drops the bomb. So, when are you planning to start full-scale production? Hugo's expression remains neutral, as he pretends to have no idea what specifically the kid is referring to. Lucian drops the act. Don't play dumb. I'm talking about that thing you're preparing in Bestra. The air in the room turns ice cold as Lucian names it, the illegal hallucinogens. Hugo's entire world just came to a screeching halt. Hugo tries to play it cool, sweating bullets while acting like he has no idea what the young master is talking about. Lucian nonchalantly stacks his poker chips, telling the man to stop playing dumb. He leans in with a smirk, asking Hugo straight up if he's being backed by the Marquis of Logrand. Lucian reveals he knows the whole scheme distributing illegal drugs to shake up Valdec territory. He mocks the Marquis for giving such degrading orders, warning that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Hugo completely freezes when Lucian addresses him by name, his composure crumbling. Lucian praises him for having the guts to pull off a stunt like that right in the heart of their territory. He paints a grim picture, noting that the second Hugo slips up, everyone in House Valdec will be out for blood. He makes it clear that there won't be a single person willing to show him mercy. Lucian tells Hugo his head must be spinning, now that his death sentence plan has been completely exposed. He drops a joker card on the table, calling himself the worst possible person Hugo could have encountered. In the original timeline, it would have taken 2 more years for the Archduke to receive reports of the drug trade, but by the time the knights finally raided the base, the place was already empty. Hugo had already managed to flee the city before the authorities could lay a finger on him. Back in the present, Hugo tries one last weak denial, claiming there must be some misunderstanding. He insists he's just a lowly shopkeeper who couldn't possibly be involved with something so dangerous. He gets aggressive, blaming jealous rivals for spreading false rumors and offering to track them down himself. Lucian shuts him down by listing every detail of his front shop and the secret drainage pipe he uses for escapes. He demands the truth one last time, his golden eyes narrowing. Hugo realizes his cover is blown. The kid knows everything about the shop and the passage. A dark thought crosses Hugo's mind. He wonders if he should just kill the brat right here. His hand drifts toward a hidden knife, thinking he could take out an unguarded noble in a single move. Lucian doesn't even flinch, calmly telling him to think very carefully before he acts. He reminds Hugo that his own life is the stake in this gamble, and he shouldn't throw it away. Hugo's hand twitches, paralyzed by the weight of the decision. He realizes he'd be an absolute idiot to touch someone from House Valdec. He can already picture himself strapped to a table, begging for a death that won't come. Broken, Hugo drops to his knees and begs for his life. He figures there must be a reason why the young master came to find him in person. Desperate to survive, he offers to be Lucian's dog, promising to crawl or bark whenever told. Every man in the room follows suit, bowing low and pleading for mercy. Lucian stands up, admitting that having a dog around wouldn't be the worst thing. Hugo looks up with a glimmer of hope, ready to do absolutely anything he's ordered. But Lucian tells him a dog is too boring for someone who clearly isn't satisfied with that life. He places a hand on Hugo's shoulder and asks if he wants to become a knight instead. The question leaves Hugo completely stunned. Becoming a knight was a dream he used to crave like a madman before he was forced to give it up. In his mercenary days, he built up skills and risked his life countless times for masters who didn't care. But in the end, he was always just a convenient tool for the high and mighty to use and discard. He used to think his bloodline could never be changed, no matter what he did. Deep down, he knows he'd sell his very soul for the chance to be more than a common thug. Hugo presses his head to the wooden floor, asking if a person like him can really become one. Lucian looks him dead in the eye and swears on the very honor of House Valdec. He declares that something as trivial as birthright won't be an obstacle anymore. With a sharp grin, he asks Hugo if he's ready to live as a real person instead of just a tool for the elite. A few days later, the scene shifts to the sun-drenched halls of the massive Valdec estate. Lucian kicks his feet up on the desk, looking completely at ease as he tells his new recruit to introduce himself. Standing tall with his hands clasped behind his back, Hugo officially joins the household staff. With a dark, predatory look in his eyes, he greets his new coworkers, ready to prove he was worth the chance Lucian gave him. Lucian decides it's time to bring in the head maid. Senior Hans isn't too thrilled about the idea and asks why she's needed all of a sudden. Lucian smirks, saying he just wants to introduce her to his new hire. Senior Hans recalls how the head maid isn't someone they can just scold like last time. He admits the household's internal structure is so far gone that normal talk won't fix it anymore. To the staff, Lucian is nothing more than a rotted rope about to snap. Senior Hans speaks up, telling the young master to think about their position for once. He reminds Lucian that headmaid Jenny is someone even Jordi Valdec keeps a close eye on. The rest of the staff chime in, begging to just let things stay the way they were. Little Hans shouts at them to get a grip and remember who the actual master is. He's practically shaking, trying to remind everyone that Lucian is the one in charge here. Hugo steps in, suggesting that a simple reprimand might be a bit too light for this crowd. He tells Lucian he knows exactly what needs to be done. The look in Hugo's eyes says everything he knows loyalty is a simple concept to teach. He asks for permission to use a slightly rougher method of education. Lucian tells him not to worry, and to give them a lesson they won't ever forget. Hugo steps forward, looming over Senior Hans like a mountain. The old servant can only stare up in shock, wondering how someone can be this massive. The intimidation is working, and Senior Hans starts to realize just how scary this new guy is. He tries to get a word out, but Hugo's fist gets there first. The punch connects with enough force to send the man spinning through the air. Hans is absolutely floored, while Lucian just enjoys the show with a cool grin. Senior Hans hits the floor hard and stays there. The other servants start screaming, calling it a crime to use violence like this. Hugo just cracks his neck, telling them he's got more than enough right to do whatever he wants. He admits that his specialty is actually dealing with crazy bastards, just like them. The guards drag in headmaid Jenny, who's putting up a serious fight. She's screaming for them to let her go, still thinking she's the one with the power. A servant tells her to just shut up and follow, finally realizing the situation has changed. She's brought right into the middle of the room, surrounded by people who have finally chosen a side. Two servants report to Lucian that headmaid Jenny has been delivered as ordered. Lucian is still staring out the window, looking perfectly calm. He turns around with a wave, welcoming her to the party. Headmaid Jenny isn't backing down, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. She warns him that Jordi Valdec isn't going to let this slide. Lucian just chuckles, asking who gave her the right to decide when this little meeting ends. He pulls out a black whip, telling her they're really just getting started. Headmaid Jenny's expression finally shifts as the reality of the situation starts to sink in. Lucian's eyes go cold as he delivers the final blow. He tells her she's going to die right here. Lucian tightens his grip on the whip. He's ready to show the Archduke that the old, weak third son is officially dead. The other servants watch in silence as headmaid Jenny tries to talk her way out of this. Lucian stands over the kneeling maid, his presence filling the room while his men hold her down. Jenny hasn't learned her lesson yet. She smugly warns him that his brother, Jordi, won't just stand by if she gets hurt. She plays her last card, claiming that since her mother was Jordi's wet nurse, they're basically family. Lucian just stares at her, completely unimpressed. He asks if that's really the best defense she's got. He leans down and starts rattling off her actual crimes, insulting a noble, negligence, and embezzlement. His gaze turns cold as he tells her she's forgotten her place. A dark smile creeps onto his face. He points out that even their father won't save her once he hears the list of charges. The reality of the situation finally hits Jenny, and the smugness vanishes from her face. Lucian turns away, suggesting his father might actually reward him for cleaning up this mess. Jenny completely breaks down, sobbing and begging for her life. But it's too late for mercy. The whip cracks down again and again in the silhouette. Elsewhere, Jordi Valdec is in total disbelief at the reports he's hearing. He rushes toward the annex, thinking about the spies he planted and how none of this was supposed to happen. He stops just outside, breathless. It's becoming clear that Lucian has already seized control of the entire servant staff. His guards try to talk some sense into him, insisting that the reports must be wrong. They remind him that Lucian always feared Jordi the most, so there's no way he'd actually go this far. Jordi bursts through the doors, looking up at the grand hall. He's met with a grisly sight. Lucian standing over a bloody Jenny, who's being held up by Hugo. The floor is stained with blood as Jordi stares at the aftermath of the punishment. Lucian turns around with a casual smile, greeting his brother as if nothing is wrong. Jordi loses it, screaming at his men to get Jenny away from there immediately. His guards charge forward to follow the order. Lucian doesn't even flinch. He calmly tells Hugo to slit the headmaid's throat if anyone takes 3 steps closer. He looks Jordi dead in the eye, promising he'll take full responsibility for what happens next. Hugo draws his blade and presses it against Jenny's neck, making it clear she isn't leaving the room alive. Jenny screams out for Jordi, desperate for him to save her. Jordi points a finger and threatens to have Hugo and his entire family executed for this defiance. Hugo doesn't budge. He tells the second master that he only follows orders from Lucian. With glowing red eyes, he reaffirms that his only duty is to his master's command, no matter the consequences. Lucian wipes the blood off the whip and lists the legal reasons for the execution: insult, defiance, and theft. He leans in close, mockingly asking Jordi if he's really going to let personal feelings get in the way of official noble business. The succession line for House Valdec is pretty straightforward. First, you've got Tristan Valdec, the eldest son, and right behind him is the second young master, Jordi. It's basically a two-way power struggle that's been set in stone for a long time. But Jordi's in a tough spot. He just failed to protect Jenny, who's essentially his right hand. This is a major turning point. If he can't protect his own people, his followers are going to start losing faith. Back in the hallway, Jordi finally throws in the towel and tells Lucian he wins, so just let the girl go. Hans is standing there with his jaw on the floor, absolutely shocked by the whole scene. But Lucian isn't having it. He asks if Jordi really thinks he can just sweep this under the rug with a single sentence. He shrugs, asking his brother what he even means by winning. Jordi tries to act casual, claiming he was just doing his duty as a brother and a master. Lucian isn't buying the respected brother act. He knows Jordi is only asking because he's desperate. He leans in with a smirk, telling Jordi he has zero justification for letting this slide. Jenny is terrified, shaking as she watches her last hope crumble. Lucian reminds them both that, since ancient times, thieves have to pay back way more than they stole. He laughs, tossing coins into the air and asking Jordi how much he really knew about the maid's little scheme. Later, the Archduke stands alone in his office, looking out the window. The incident is officially brought to a close, and the details reach the head of the house. Sigmund looks over the report, asking his head butler if the information is actually for real. Raymond confirms everything. He verified the whole mess, personally. He explains that Lucian made Jordi pay 10 times the stolen amount as compensation. The butler adds that Lucian even hired an outsider named Hugo and is already rooting out the spies in his annex. Because of that, Lucian's area is now more heavily guarded than anywhere else in the estate. Just as they finish talking, Lucian walks in, noting that his father summoned him. Sigmund watches him approach, feeling like something about the boy's gaze has completely changed. He cuts straight to the point, mentioning the ruckus Lucian caused recently. Lucian doesn't call it a ruckus. He says he was just educating servants who forgot who their master was. Sigmund warns him that Jordi isn't going to forget this anytime soon, and asks if he can handle the heat. Lucian stays cool, claiming he was only upholding proper hierarchy and order for the house. He adds that if he let fear stop him from doing his duty, he wouldn't even deserve the Valdec name. A small smirk actually touches the Archduke's face. He tells Lucian that if Jordi keeps picking fights, he's free to strike back however he wants. That catches Lucian off guard. He didn't expect his father to be so blunt about it. Sigmund asks why he's so surprised by the advice. He admits Jordi might be hasty, but the guy has actually contributed a lot to the family power. He contrasts that with Lucian, who basically wasted an entire year doing nothing. Lucian realizes what's happening. It sounds like his dad is telling him to step over his brother and climb the ladder. Sigmund tells him to build up his strength and actually contribute something to the house. He says if Lucian manages that, he'll find the answers he's looking for. Lucian narrows his eyes, realizing his father is trying to provoke him into moving faster. It's a clear signal that the succession order is going to be set in stone before too long. He looks at his father, wondering if all dads in this world are this intense. Lucian tucks an envelope into his shirt, musing that if his father is going to worry about him this much, then he might as well show him something real. He leans over and slams a document onto the desk, asking what the Duke would think if he already had his next move planned out. He flashes a sharp, confident grin, promising that his next play is going to be a massive one. Sigmund looks over the report Lucian brought. He asks if the details are truly accurate. Lucian stands firm. He tells his father it's the absolute truth. Sigmund's expression hardens as he reads about the insider working under Marquis Logran to spread drugs. Lucian is ready to prove his claims right now. Sigmund's mana flares up, filling the room with a cold blue pressure. He's furious that Marquis Bernhardt would be so shameless. The weight of Sigmund's power is suffocating, a reminder of why he's the master of the house. Lucian doesn't back down and asks for one more word. He points out that reporting this to the Emperor is pointless because the Marquis will just sacrifice a pawn to escape. Lucian explains that the paper trail stops at subordinate companies, leaving the Marquis clean on the surface. Sigmund looks at his son, surprised by how sharp his political insight has become. He realizes that a standard report would only result in a minor fine for their enemies. Lucian knocks over a piece on the board. He wants more than a fine. He wants to take an arm. Sigmund leans back, intrigued by the boy's aggression. Lucian reveals he's already secured a way to make sure they can't wiggle out of this. He explains how an insider from the underworld has already defected to him. Sigmund listens, as it's revealed Lucian personally recruited a man named Hugo. The Archduke watches his son leave, wondering if he planned this entire situation from the start. Sigmund taps the desk. He sees exactly what Lucian is doing, setting a reverse trap using the traitor. Lucian confirms the plan. But Sigmund is skeptical about betting everything on a variable as unstable as a back alley thug. He warns Lucian that you can never truly walk beside someone you don't trust. Lucian smiles. He doesn't trust the man, he trusts the man's greed. He explains what Hugo really wants. Hugo doesn't just want money, he wants to be a knight and make a name for himself. Sigmund laughs at the audacity, but he knows a man's desperate dreams are powerful motivators. Lucian is willing to put his faith in that ambition. Sigmund calls it sentimental, but he's not entirely displeased. He asks what happens if it all goes wrong. Lucian doesn't hesitate, he'll take full responsibility. In fact, he's willing to stake his own head to pay the price of failure. Impressed, Sigmund tells Lucian to get back to the training grounds once his body has recovered. He officially declares Lucian a candidate for the next head of House Valdec and promises to teach him the family's sword style. Later that night, Sigmund is alone in the library, still thinking about the meeting. Raymond approaches, apologizing for the security lapse that let things get this far in the city. Sigmund waves it off, admitting he's the one who kept Raymond focused on the borders. He shifts the topic to Hugo, wanting to know more about the man his son recruited. Raymond reports that while Hugo looks like a simple gambling den owner, he's actually the boss of a rising underworld organization. He's clearly impressed by Lucian's ability to seek out and recruit such a dangerous subordinate. Hugo, for his part, had seen something special in Lucian from the beginning. He viewed Lucian as a lord worth dying for. Raymond asks who will be Lucian's swordsmanship instructor now that he's a candidate. Sigmund decides he'll have Sir Eisen handle it. Sigmund admits it's a shame to pull the veteran out of his quiet retirement. However, he believes training someone with Lucian's potential will be a meaningful way for Sir Eisen to spend his time. Hans is practically in tears, asking Lucian if this is for real. He can't believe Lucian has actually become an official successor candidate. Hugo has to step in and tell the kid to take a breather. Hans is stunned when Hugo mentions the kid acting like a right-hand man. The idea of being Lucian's right hand has Hans sweating and completely caught off guard. Hugo just laughs it off, claiming he's still lacking despite his long service, especially with a sharp junior around. Lucian confirms that Hugo's right. They're the first to know before the news goes public. He knows Hans has a gentle heart, which can sometimes be a liability in their world. But despite that, Hans's loyalty is ironclad, and he never wavered, even during the tough times. Lucian thinks Hans could be a master of internal affairs once he gets more experience. Then there's Hugo, whose raw strength already speaks for itself. Lucian just needs to pave the way for him to become a knight to unlock his full potential. He envisions them as the strongest weapons serving by his side in the future. It's about quality over quantity now, and he's going to mold them one step at a time. He lets them know that from today on, they're all going to be a lot busier. Lucian admits that the road ahead isn't one he can walk alone. He tells them straight up that he needs them with him to make it. Hugo clenches his fist, dead serious about not letting his master down. Hans is fired up too, telling Lucian he can absolutely count on them. The sun shines over the massive Valdec estate. Lucian stands alone in the center of a grand training hall. He thinks back to his past life, wandering through the snow in search of power. He was obsessed with finding a sword form, an ancient martial art that could elevate his skills. For a mercenary like him, these forms were the ultimate prize. The highest realm was the advanced sword form, something he desperately wanted. But a secret manual like that wasn't just lying around for anyone to find. In the end, he only managed to acquire a degraded version used by beginner knights. Back then, real sword forms were strictly for the highborn. A mercenary even seeing one was a miracle. He remembers the bitterness of losing men because his techniques just weren't enough to beat the elites. But now, he has access to a secret form passed down only to the Valdec heirs. The Lionheart sword is finally within his reach, and he's not going to waste the opportunity. Even with all his battle experience, the anticipation has him feeling a bit on edge. He takes a moment to steady himself in the middle of the hall. Lucian sits on the floor, focusing on circulating his mana to clear his mind. It's still surreal to him that he's actually getting a second chance at life. From the side, Sir Eisen watches him, noting that the boy's resolve hasn't wavered once. Eisen wonders what could have triggered such a massive change in the kid's personality. Later that night, Archduke Sigmund and Sir Eisen sit down for a drink to discuss the training. Sigmund admits he'd almost given up hope on Lucian entirely. But after taking a closer look, the Archduke is starting to see some real promise. Eisen agrees, noting that Lucian's talent is actually quite exceptional. But it's not just the skill, it's the shift in Lucian's mindset that truly has the old master surprised. Eisen tells him he'll have to see it for himself to truly understand how much the boy has changed. The legendary sword saint, Eisen Breitner, just smiles, knowing exactly how much potential is waiting to be unleashed. A sword saint is basically a legend, a god walking among regular swordsmen. They've pushed mana circulation to the absolute limit and reached a true state of awakening. And right now, Lucian realizes he's staring at one of these legendary beings. Sir Eisen introduces himself, acknowledging the third young master. He officially announces that he'll be Lucian's new instructor. The kid is stunned. Nobody mentioned his teacher was going to be a living legend. He immediately bows, showing the proper respect for a master of that caliber. It's a shock to see a candidate for head of the house bow so easily. But Lucian knows that, when you're facing real greatness, pride doesn't matter. He looks Eisen right in the eye, completely focused. Eisen starts the lesson with something simple, just a few laps around the field. Lucian is ready to go before he even finishes the sentence. The instructor pauses, surprised by how eager his new student is. He asks if Lucian isn't even curious about why he's running, or how far. Lucian just smiles. He trusts that if the master ordered it, there's a good reason for it. He's determined to follow every single word from his teacher. Eisen is already noticing a pure hunger for the sword in this boy's eyes. Without wasting another second, Lucian takes off. He starts his laps around the massive courtyard. He knows exactly what Eisen is up to, because he's played this game before. The run is a classic way to measure a student's raw potential. It's like checking the roots to see how much a plant can grow. Back when Lucian was a mercenary captain, he used these same kinds of tests. He'd have recruits do the most boring, menial chores imaginable. Watching their reactions revealed everything about their true character. Eisen is looking for that same mental toughness and right attitude. Now, the only thing left for Lucian to prove is his endurance. He decides he's going to push himself until he literally passes out. An hour later, Lucian stops, but he looks more confused than tired. He's been running like a madman, yet he feels perfectly fine. In fact, the more he runs, the lighter his body seems to get. It makes zero sense, especially since his only exercise lately has been light walks. Over on the sidelines, Eisen's jaw is starting to drop. He only expected to see the boy's general fitness, but this is defying all logic. Lucian isn't even breaking a sweat, and his breathing is perfectly steady. Even veteran knights struggle to maintain that level of control. Eisen finally walks out to put a stop to the run. He tells Lucian that's more than enough for today's test. As he gets closer, he notices the kid is actually channeling mana while sprinting. He asks Lucian about his morning routine. He wants to know if that meditation he saw earlier was actually mana circulation. Lucian just shrugs and says it's the best way he knows to clear his head. Sir Eisen's suspicions are confirmed. The kid is even more of a monster than he thought. He asks Lucian if he can take a moment to examine his condition properly. He takes the boy's hand, and blue mana begins to swirl as their energies connect. His eyes widen as he senses the sheer scale of the energy inside. He realizes Lucian has already reached the absolute peak of mana circulation, just like him. But that's not the end of it. The boy is carving out a massive new path that goes way beyond anything Eisen has ever reached. Sir Eisen looks Lucian dead in the eye, wanting to know exactly when he reached the end of his mana circulation. He explains that Lucian's mana is as pure as fresh snow, and his internal structure is in perfect form for efficiency. To Eisen, the boy's body functions like a perfectly tuned water wheel, drawing out every bit of power possible. The master explains that this is a realm most warriors spend an entire lifetime trying to reach. Lucian keeps a calm face, though he's impressed that his current form is already bordering on perfection. He reflects on his body's condition, feeling like he's finally getting the answers he's been searching for. Eisen admits that only someone at the level of a sword saint could truly give Lucian the guidance he needs now. Lucian mentions he's only been practicing this for a month, yet his pathways were open from the very start. He finds it strange, since he always heard mana circulation was supposed to be a painful process. Aizen turns away, shocked that Lucian achieved in weeks what took him decades of hardship to barely touch. Looking at their shadows on the training ground, he wonders if the legends of ancient swordsmen were actually true. He finally turns back with a radical proposal. Would Lucian consider giving up his position as the Valdec heir? Lucian is stunned, unable to believe the master just suggested he walk away from his family succession. He panics, checking himself over and wondering if there's something fundamentally broken inside his body. Aizen quickly settles him, clarifying that it's the opposite. He's the definition of an ideal vessel for the sword. He explains that Lucian doesn't just have mana efficiency, he has the potential to see far beyond that. If he were to focus every ounce of his energy solely on the way of the sword, Aizen believes the legendary title of Sword Saint would actually be within his reach. The idea of reaching such a mythical height leaves Lucian completely speechless. He stares at his hands, realizing his current situation has gone way past even his own wild expectations. He thinks back to the legendary Lion's Heart sword form and the luck he had in finding it. He remembers his past life, where he spent every waking moment desperately crawling toward this very path. Now, he's finally in a position to gaze at the absolute peak of swordsmanship. He asks if it's really impossible to pursue both his family duties and the path of a sword saint. Aizen lowers his head, confirming that the two paths simply can't be walked together. He confesses the harsh truth. He doesn't have much time left to pass on his knowledge. Despite his mastery, he can feel his body decaying, a reminder that even his power has its limits. He warns Lucian that even if he focused solely on the sword starting now, time would still be incredibly tight. Lucian knows from his memories that the Sword Saint only has 8 years left to live. In his heart, he wants to take the offer and chase the sword, but reality is pulling him back. He knows the coming chaos can't be survived through raw martial strength alone. To protect what's coming, he needs the legitimacy that only a proper heir can hold. He clenches his fist and prepares to give Sir Aizen his final answer. Looking out over the vast training grounds, he tells the master he wants to remain a Valdec until the very end. He bows, expressing his deep regret for being unable to accept such a once-in-a-lifetime offer. Aizen looks down, feeling ashamed for putting a young man in such a difficult position. The old master looks at his feet, wondering why he's only showing this kind of greed, now that he's at the end. He admits he just wanted to leave a piece of his legacy behind through someone like Lucian. Lucian looks up, sensing the weight of the old man's disappointment. He asks Aizen what he would do if there were another candidate for his teachings. Meanwhile, his younger brother, Joshua Valdec, is out practicing his own skills. A panicked steward rushes over to confirm that the rumors about the third young master are actually true. Joshua Valdec is in total disbelief, demanding to know if the absurd stories he's been hearing are actually true. He's fuming at the realization that the brother he considers an idiot has been officially named a successor candidate. The steward confirms every bit of it. The Archduke has included Lucian in the succession, and even assigned him to train under Sir Aizen. Joshua is already struggling to build his own power base while being overshadowed by his older brothers, and this news only makes things worse. He realizes that with Lucian back in the picture, the neutral factions now have a new option to rally behind, threatening his own hard-earned influence. He lashes out in a fit of rage, wishing Lucian had just stayed locked away in his room forever. When the steward tells him to stay calm, Joshua just snaps, terrified that his few supporters might start wavering. He suddenly turns away, a dark thought crossing his mind as he notes that Lucian is going to need a sparring partner soon. He gives the steward a chilling order. He wants 2 swords prepared for the occasion immediately. He makes it very clear that they won't be using wooden practice gear. He wants real, sharpened combat blades. With a malicious smirk, he vows to make Lucian understand that his place in the family hasn't changed one bit. Lucian admits finding the right guy is going to take some time, but he's sure it'll be worth the wait. He's looking for a legend, a guy so talented he'd leave a scar on even a sword saint like Aizen. Sir Aizen just listens, probably wondering where the kid gets these wild ideas. The old master looks a bit melancholy, feeling like he's dumping too much on his student's shoulders. Aizen gives a warm smile, glad to see Lucian actually cares about his advice. They stand in the courtyard, the student thanking his master for the kind words. Lucian watches the old man walk off, thinking Aizen definitely thinks he's just talking crazy. It makes sense, Aizen doesn't even care about famous swordsmen, so why would he believe some random genius exists? But Lucian knows the truth. If there are geniuses born with mana, there have to be geniuses born for the sword too. He's thinking of someone with a thin build and terrible form, who somehow still wrecks everything in his path. This guy is a literal monster on the battlefield, a living blade that cuts through soldiers like paper. His name is Felix the Sword Demon, and he's exactly the kind of powerhouse Lucian needs. Lucian is determined to make Felix his strongest subordinate, all while he works to inherit every technique the Sword Saint has to offer. Back in reality, Aizen is ready to see how much progress his pupil has actually made. He gestures toward a wooden dummy, telling Lucian to show off his strikes and mana control. Lucian grips the wooden sword, realizing this is the first time he's actually held one in this body. He stands before the dummy, reminding himself to go easy and keep his power in check. His gaze sharpens as he focuses everything into the blade. A vertical strike comes down hard, hitting the dummy right in the center. He follows up with a horizontal swing, the air whistling as the wooden sword cuts through it. He channels his mana, and the blade begins to glow with an intense blue light. The final strike releases a massive burst of energy, sending a shockwave through the courtyard. Lucian looks pretty pleased with himself, thinking that, for a first try, it wasn't half bad. Aizen is genuinely shocked the kid's talent is way beyond what he expected. Lucian asks what's up, but the old master's face has already gone serious again. Aizen tells him straight, bad habits are clinging to every single one of his swings. He drops a bombshell, telling Lucian he looks more like a desperate mercenary fighting for survival than a noble. Aizen points out that he's only focusing on speed and power, leaving zero balance between his body and his mana. He grills his student, asking how long it took to actually coat that blade in energy. Lucian plays it cool, guessing it took about a second or two. But Aizen's expression says, that's not the right answer. Suddenly, Aizen lunges forward, his wooden sword stopping inches from Lucian's throat. He warns him that on a real battlefield, those 1 or 2 seconds are more than enough for an enemy to kill him. Lucian freezes, realizing the blade reached his neck before he could even blink. He pictures his head rolling on the ground, a cold reminder of how easily he could have died. He admits he messed up, and promises to fix his mindset before the next lesson. Aizen nods, reminding him that a gifted body won't save him against an experienced mana user. To find true power, he explains that your inner and outer strength have to flow as one balanced stream. The old master steps up to show him how it's really done. With a single strike, he completely vaporizes the wooden training dummy. As the dust settles, Aizen tells him that this is the path he has to walk from now on. Several days pass. Lucian and Sir Aizen are back in the training hall, clashing swords with intense focus. Aizen warns him not to let the flow of mana break during the exchange. The young master is sweating, completely locked into the fight. The master explains that when using mana to strengthen the body, he must always keep some in reserve. A quick overhead strike from Lucian is blocked effortlessly. Aizen notes that only when everything works in balance will the sword style's true power be revealed. Time to switch to defense. Aizen's blade begins to hum with a bright green aura. The pressure in the room shifts as the old man prepares his attack. Lucian's own sword glows blue as he braces for the coming blow. Their weapons collide with a deafening crash that echoes through the hall. Aizen holds the advantage, his glowing blade centimeters from Lucian's face. A final, massive explosion of mana rocks the entire room. Aizen calls an end to the session, both of them standing amidst the rubble of the training floor. The old man offers a rare compliment, telling Lucian he's already becoming a top-tier swordsman. Lucian collapses to the ground, panting as he thanks his teacher for the guidance. Servants are left to clean up the mess. The stone floor is absolutely shredded with craters. One of the staff members is visibly shaken just looking at the destruction. Despite being exhausted, Lucian smiles to himself, satisfied with today's progress. His hands won't stop shaking, but he's glad he could endure the harsh training. He's determined to shake off every bad habit he picked up in his previous life. The more he thinks about Aizen's teaching style, the more incredible it feels. The master knows exactly how to push him to his absolute limit while drawing out the right response. It sounds simple in theory, but understanding a student's physical state like that requires mastery. He can clearly feel himself getting stronger with every passing second. In his past life, things like balance and mana flow were never things he took seriously. He grips his training sword, his mind drifting back to the man who killed him. He remembers the terrifying presence of the knight who once took his life. That man was a monster in armor that he stood absolutely no chance against. He wonders if his sword would even reach that man now, or if he's still miles away. Lucian sighs, wishing he had a decent sparring partner to test himself against. Right on cue, someone enters the training hall. It's his younger brother, Joshua Valdec, putting on his usual polite act. Joshua pays his respects to Aizen while his own butler stands behind him like a shadow. Since his older brother has finally started training, Joshua offers to help refine his skills. He smiles down at Lucian with a condescending, snake-like look in his eyes. But Lucian isn't annoyed, he's thrilled that a top-tier target just walked right into his trap. Sir Aizen asks Joshua what he's getting at by wanting to help with the training. Joshua explains he wants to spar with his brother to help him practice using mana. He puts on a friendly act, offering himself up as a partner. He claims there hasn't been much time for brotherly bonding lately. Joshua begs Sir Aizen to give them a chance to train together. Lucian isn't buying it. He knows this guy didn't just barge in to spend quality time. He notices Joshua brought a real sword for someone with only a week of formal lessons. It's obvious Joshua just wants to crush him and secure his own position in the family. Sir Aizen realizes the stakes just got a lot higher with him watching. Lucian walks up and tells the master to just accept the proposal. He plays along, smiling as if he's touched by his brother's admirable heart. Internally, he thinks the guy is shameless and he's not about to let this slide. Joshua is loving it, thinking he's finally going to put his brother in his place. Sir Eisen sees that Lucian knows exactly what's happening, but is choosing to jump in anyway. He figures it's just the Valdec blood talking, and decides to allow the match. He warns them this is the only time he's allowing this, and he'll stop it if things get ugly. Both brothers salute and agree to the terms. Joshua shoots Lucian a predatory grin, mockingly calling him little brother. He can barely contain his excitement. Sir Eisen emphasizes that this is a match for learning, not for drawing blood. He tells them to bring no shame to the family name. The two face off in the center of the training grounds. Joshua asks Lucian when he suddenly started acting like the older brother. He draws his sword, ready to see if Lucian's still talking after the match is over. Joshua is convinced that by the end, everyone will know who's actually on top. Lucian keeps a cold, steady gaze on his target. He feels the heavy, cool weight of the blade in his hands. He thinks back to his past life as Jake, where he would have used every dirty trick to win. But today, he has to play the part of the third young master. With Sir Eisen watching, he knows he can't reveal his old self just yet. Lucian steps forward, keeping his cool, despite the pressure. Joshua smirks, thinking Lucian has lost his nerve and is just trying to read the room. Joshua grips his sword tight, a smug look on his face as he asks if the weight of the steel finally makes the situation feel real. He chuckles, claiming that accidents only happen in live blade sparring when the two fighters are actually on the same level. He even offers to switch back to wooden swords if Lucian is too scared, but Lucian just laughs it off and says that might be for the best. Lucian's expression goes cold, as he clarifies he's only agreeing so his little brother doesn't end up getting hurt. That's all the motivation Joshua needs to charge right back in, kicking up a cloud of dust. He's absolutely fuming, vowing to make Lucian regret every single word he just said. Lucian blocks the strike, thinking to himself that trying to teach the kid a lesson while holding back is a total chore. He watches Joshua's sloppy follow-up, acknowledging that while his fundamentals are okay, they're nothing special. To Lucian, it's clear his brother is a total amateur if he lets a little bit of trash talk get under his skin this easily. The two separate for a heartbeat, the courtyard dead silent as they square off again. Joshua launches himself forward with his blade glowing, putting everything he has into one big overhead strike. Lucian just stands his ground, watching the blow descend without even flinching. He tells Joshua to clench his teeth unless he wants to bite his own tongue off. The blades collide with a violent crack that rattles the entire area. The sheer force of the blow drives Joshua straight down onto his knees. Lucian looms over him with a predatory grin, enjoying every second of the kid's struggle. He mocks him, lecturing that a man shouldn't be so quick to drop to the ground. Joshua snaps and tells him to shut up, desperately swinging upward to force some distance. He backs away, gasping for air, and trying to convince himself that last hit was just a lucky fluke. He charges in once more with a roar, shouting that he won't let it happen a second time. Lucian just bats the sword aside like it's a fly, looking completely bored with the whole thing. The two blades clash again, lighting up the courtyard with sparks as the fight intensifies. The steward watches with a worried look, asking Sir Eisen if they should step in before someone gets killed. He notes that Joshua's resentment has only grown deeper since they're always being compared to one another. He sighs, saying that when it comes to Lucian, the kid simply refuses to listen to reason. Eisen keeps his eyes on the fight, remarking that Joshua is just flailing around in a rough and immature way. He tells the butler they should actually be worried about what happens if the roles were reversed. Another heavy strike rings out across the grounds as Eisen analyzes the two brothers. Eisen thinks that while Lucian was born with incredible potential, he still lacks the time to actually use it properly. He looks at Joshua and sees a kid with average talent who has managed to sprout through sheer, steady training. He knows that a gap in skills like this isn't something that can be overcome by just a bit of luck. Joshua is letting his temper crumble every technical advantage he had over his brother. Meanwhile, Lucian is just biding his time, silently aiming for the perfect opening to end this. Eisen realizes that staying that calm in front of a live blade requires someone to have already conquered their fear. He stares at the look in Lucian's eyes, wondering if the boy is just too ignorant to be afraid, or if he has the cold, hard boldness of someone who has actually looked death in the face many times before. Looking at the way Lucian carries himself, Eisen is certain it's definitely the latter. Joshua keeps pushing his advantage, taunting Lucian for losing the confidence he had earlier in the match. Lucian parries the strike easily, noticing just how much his little brother seems to be enjoying himself. He figures it's natural for anyone to feel excited when they think they're about to crush their older brother. For Lucian, there's no easier opponent to beat than one who gets blinded by a simple provocation. Still, he admits Joshua's skills were better than expected, and his own dwindling mana means he can't finish this in one strike. His internal reserves are nearly bottomed out, barely leaving him enough energy to keep his body reinforced. With his strength fading, Lucian decides to bet everything on the very next exchange. The two brothers clash again, their blades meeting with desperate force. Joshua flinches as Lucian's sword suddenly feels impossibly heavy for a split second. Desperate to end it, Joshua puts all his weight into a final, decisive strike. Good, Lucian thinks, his expression turning cold. That's exactly what I wanted. A massive shockwave erupts from the point of impact, rattling the entire courtyard. Joshua stares in disbelief, sweat pouring down his face as he realizes something went horribly wrong. Through the smoke and dust, Lucian gives him a calm, terrifying smile. Lucian mocks him, asking if he was so focused on that last strike that he didn't even plan for a follow-up. He laughs right in the boy's face, telling him this lack of foresight is exactly why he's the younger brother. Lucian stomps his foot down, pinning Joshua's sword firmly to the ground. It's a complete defeat, leaving Joshua grounded and helpless. Lucian looms over him, his smile widening as he asks his brother what he thinks is going to happen to him now. He lets out a chilling laugh that echoes through the training grounds. News of the sparring match and its shock ending spreads through the Valdec family like wildfire. High-ranking staff whisper in the hallways about how Lucian completely overwhelmed his brother. Some find it hard to believe Lucian could be that strong already, but the Sword Saint's presence at the match confirms the rumors. Even the maids are gossiping, with some claiming that Joshua was actually reduced to tears by the end. Rumors in a house like this move fast and tend to get a bit exaggerated along the way. A maid stops in her tracks, eyes popping as she hears the latest, inflated version of the duel. Everyone is desperate for the real story, so they corner advisor Hugo to get the full scoop. Hugo is surprised the news has already reached people, but he realizes the leak was likely intentional. Young Hans mimics the fight with excitement, recounting how Lucian took Joshua's sword as a prize. While the household is busy gossiping, only a few people realize this whole scene was carefully orchestrated by one man. Lucian looks satisfied with the chaos he's caused, thinking it's a perfect day for rumors to spread. He tells his brother to be grateful it only ended this way, stressing the words, "little brother with pure venom." Joshua has completely snapped, screaming out an apology and begging for Lucian's forgiveness. Standing victorious on the training ground, Lucian's dominance is now absolute. He gives Joshua one final warning. If he tries any more tricks, the next encounter won't be nearly as fun. He demands a nod of understanding, his eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. Later that day, Lucian is back in his room, pleased that his troublesome brothers will finally be quiet for a while. He turns his focus to the documents on his desk, his mind already moving to his next goal. The report in front of him is clear. It's time to deal with House Logran. Archduke Sigmund Valdec reviews a secret letter from Hugo, his expression unreadable. Lucian explains that the contact will be made in the Bestra territory in a week's time. He points out that the enemies likely thought the Archduke's reach wouldn't extend that far, but they were mistaken. Sigmund asks Lucian why he's bringing this problem to him after being told to handle the matter on his own. Lucian looks his father in the eye and simply states that he needs more strength to get the job done. He uses the analogy of a trapped beast, explaining that just because it's caught doesn't mean it's no longer dangerous. Without the right tools, Lucian knows he isn't quite ready to finish the hunt by himself yet. Sigmund calls it a rational move, but he points out that it sounds like Lucian just wants to hide behind his father's power. The Archduke leans in, questioning if Lucian thinks anyone will actually respect an achievement he didn't earn himself. Sigmund explains that a hunter only earns his name by taking down prey with his own strength. He's disappointed that Lucian chose a safe, easy path instead of challenging himself. Sigmund stares him down, asking if this is really the best his son can manage. Lucian doesn't flinch, his gaze remaining sharp and focused on his goal. He tells his father that if a half-baked victory is what it takes to win, he'll take it without hesitation. To him, worrying about personal glory while people are in danger is nothing but reckless, empty pride. He argues that the priority should be eliminating the threat, not looking brave for the sake of appearances. If the danger is gone, he asks, then who cares what people call the achievement? Sigmund closes his eyes, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips at his son's defiance. He admits it's been a long time since anyone had the guts to argue with him like that to his face. The Archduke takes a quiet sip of his tea, the tension in the room finally beginning to break. He reveals that the whole conversation was just a test to see if Lucian's convictions were real. Sigmund warns that no one would follow a leader who lets himself be swayed by authority or the opinions of others. Lucian lets out a tired sigh, realizing his father isn't going to make anything easy for him. Since he passed the test, Lucian asks for the actual support he needs for the mission. Sigmund looks over the documents again, agreeing that a large-scale movement would give them away. He decides that a small, elite group is the way to go to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Lucian smiles, relieved to have secured some of the house's best knights for his plan. Sigmund tells him he's giving him the Black Lion, a heavy responsibility for anyone to carry. He tells Lucian to feel the weight of his position and prove he can handle it on his own. A week has passed, and we're looking over a city that's clearly seen better days. Lucian and Hugo make their way through the rubble-filled streets, keeping a low profile. Hugo is still in the dark about the full plan, and asks when Lucian is finally going to spill the details. Lucian tells him to be patient for now. They just need to stay focused on the prey. Hugo double-checks that the trap has been set properly. The item Lucian requested is ready, but Hugo is still worried they don't have enough backup to pull this off. Lucian picks up on his mood and asks if it bothers him that they have to rely on his father's resources. It's not about the help. Hugo just wishes he was strong enough to handle things himself. Lucian reaches out, telling Hugo he understands exactly how he feels. He reminds him that they can't let impatience cloud their judgment and lead them astray. Lucian laughs it off, telling Hugo he's barely past 30 and has plenty of time to grow. Hugo looks at him dead serious and points out that he's actually only 23. Lucian's jaw practically hits the floor when he hears that. He tries to play it cool and correct himself, but Hugo just tells him to stop. It's only making things more depressing. Shifting back to business, Lucian looks around, wondering where their supposed backup is hiding. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, addressing him as the third young master. Hugo reacts instantly, but his blade is stopped dead by a single, bare hand. A man steps out of the shadows, calling Hugo's speed laughably slow. Hugo can't believe it. His sword is completely neutralized by one hand. He's been overpowered by sheer strength, something that's never happened to him before. Lucian stays calm, telling Hugo to stand down because the man isn't an enemy. Hugo doesn't buy it, not when the guy is radiating such intense killing intent. He looks up at the newcomer, trying to gauge who this monster is. Then it clicks. He asks if this is the legendary Black Lion unit from the rumors. The Black Lion is House Valdec's supreme shadow, a unit that only answers to the head of the family. Lucian confirms it, introducing them as the hunters assigned to support their mission. Raymond, the leader, gives a formal salute to the young master. He explains that the earlier show of force was just a test to see how Lucian's attendant would react. Lucian stares at them, thinking about how even in his past life, these people were nothing more than a myth. He's impressed. Even standing right in front of him, they're so good at hiding their presence that he can't read them at all. He realizes that every single person in this unit is a complete monster. He looks back, acknowledging that his father really didn't hold back with the reinforcements. They head inside to talk business, where Lucian informs them that Logrand's side has already taken the bait. He has one specific task for them. The person in charge of the enemy operation must be captured alive. As for everyone else, Lucian tells them there's no reason to show mercy. Raymond watches him, thinking about how he expected the young master to just be handed a victory. But Lucian is different. He's perfectly composed, even when caught off guard. He showed careful judgment by gauging their strength, proving he's more than just a noble brat. Raymond senses that a new wind is about to blow through the family. The entire unit bows in unison, accepting Lucian's command. Elsewhere, Logrand Valdec is lounging in a carriage, complaining about how boring the trip has been. He's only here because his father ordered it, and he's clearly not happy about being in such a backwater city. He steps out, and we're formally introduced to Philip Logrand, the fourth son of House Logrand, who thinks even the air in this place is unpleasant. A man in a brown hood bows low, practically pressing his forehead to the dirt as he greets Logrand Valdec. One of the knights isn't taking any chances, drawing his sword and ordering the stranger to stay back. The messenger begs for his life, claiming he's just a lowly guide sent by boss Hugo to show them the way. Hidden beneath his hood, Joshua Valdec smirks, thinking about what a worthless wretch he's dealing with. Logrand just scoffs and walks past him, telling his knight to put the blade away since even talking to filth is beneath them. As the group moves ahead, Joshua watches them with a cold gaze, noting Logrand's total lack of caution. Logrand wipes his mouth with a handkerchief, completely oblivious to the fact that he's being hunted. Joshua stays a few paces behind the group, counting the 10 apprentice knights making up the escort. His eyes lock onto Raymond, identifying the veteran as the only one in the group worth worrying about. He notices the group even brought maids along, finding the choice absolutely pathetic. Logrand's voice booms out, ordering the guide to stop standing around and lead the way. Joshua puts on his best act, stumbling forward like a clumsy servant to avoid any suspicion. Logrand pauses for a second, looking back at the maids with a nagging feeling that one of their faces looks familiar. Joshua keeps moving, thinking to himself that she simply looks like a ghost from the past. Logrand's complaints continue as they enter the building, whining about the place being a dump and the smell being suffocating. He's convinced that Hugo must be pocketing the family funds to let his headquarters rot like this. They reach the main hall, where Hugo is waiting for them in the shadows. Hugo steps forward with a grin, apologizing for the delay and claiming the goods were sensitive to handle. Looking at the young noble, Hugo realizes Logrand really doesn't suspect a thing. He mentions the existence of something so corrupt it would rot the entire city of Kelheim to its core. With a dark laugh, Hugo promises to let them see it for themselves immediately. Joshua is impressed by Hugo's nerves, noting how the man doesn't even have a tremor in his voice while lying. Logrand barks an order at Joshua, telling his underling to go and fetch the item from the boss. Hugo plays along, signaling for his people to bring the prepared item forward. Hugo hands over a small, glowing vial to disguise Joshua. The vial is filled with blue crystals. Joshua confirms he's received it perfectly before moving. Suddenly, Joshua leaps back, the act of the submissive guide completely vanishing. He tosses the vial high into the air with a perfect throw. Logrand is left gaping, demanding to know what the hell the kid thinks he's doing. The knight realizes the danger and shouts for the young master to get behind him. The vial shatters midair, releasing a violent, blinding explosion of light. An intense white glare blasts out of the windows, illuminating the entire surrounding area. Logran collapses to the floor, clutching his head and screaming for his guards to help him. He panics, shouting into the silence when no one answers his call. Through the fading light, a dark silhouette looms over the fallen noble. A voice tells the lord to run, but Logran is frozen in place as the shadow approaches. One of the knights is shown with blood running down his face, realizing the betrayal too late. A blade pierces through a guard's armor from behind, ending him instantly. The vial was a flash mana stone, a rare and expensive tool perfect for blinding an entire room. 2 more of the guards fall dead by the door, never even getting a chance to fight back. Raymond stands tall, sheathing his sword, and reporting that all threats have been neutralized. Sigmund Valdec stares down at his son, telling him to feel the true weight of the power he's been chasing. Logran is on his knees, surrounded by shadows. He's panicking, screaming for everyone to stay back as his world falls apart. Trembling, he tries to use his noble status as a shield, shouting about his bloodline as the 4th son of the Valdec family. Raymond stands over him, cold and unimpressed. He tells Logran to submit to his arrest, as his fate is now in the hands of the Archduke. Joshua drops the act and stands with Hugo. Logran finally realizes the guide he's been insulting this whole time was actually a son of the Valdec house. His desperation hits a fever pitch. He screams at his servants to do something, refusing to let himself be captured like a commoner. Joshua watches with a neutral expression. He's already decided the job is finished, and there's no one left to oppose them. Logran's eyes widen as he spots one final hope. He screams Felicia's name, his voice cracking with fear. He gives her permission to take up a sword, begging the maid to handle the mess because she's the only one left. Felicia draws a blade, and the air around her shifts. It's the same face and a name that's almost identical to a legend. The moment her fingers wrap around the hilt, her aura completely transforms. She's no longer just a maid. She stands tall, eyes cold and predatory. Someone watches from the shadows, wondering if she really is the sword demon Felix. Logran is still groveling on the floor, begging her to save him and promising to do anything in return. He keeps babbling about protecting her from insults, completely missing the fact that she's the most dangerous person in the room. Felicia doesn't even look at him. She just tells him to shut his mouth if he wants to stay alive. She's reached her limit with his stupidity. With a sharp glare, she readies her blade, looking every bit like the monster they feared. Logran Valdec trembles as he hides behind one of the maids. The unnamed Silver Knight looks back with disgust, calling his cowardice disgraceful. The knight turns his cold gaze toward Felicia, warning her not to throw her life away on a reckless display of bravado. Felicia doesn't flinch, her eyes glowing with a sharp, determined light as she tightens the grip on her sword. The unnamed Silver Knight lunges forward, his blade striking with enough force to shatter the wooden floor. Felicia's eyes widen as she barely manages to track the sheer speed of the incoming strike. A shower of sparks erupts as she manages to parry, though the force of the blow nearly knocks her back. She flows into her next movement with unnatural grace, her maid uniform fluttering as she prepares a counterstrike. From the shadows, a golden eye watches the exchange with predatory focus, reading every detail of her form. Felicia settles into a focused stance, her expression hardening as she realizes the level of her opponent. In the back of Lucian's mind, he sees the shadow of Felix, the legendary sword demon who once dominated the mercenary world. He recalls standing in a quiet forest before Felix, a man whose grace seemed entirely out of place in a world of killers. Felix was a genius of the sword, possessing a presence that commanded respect even in his moments of rest. Back in the warehouse, Logran is in a state of panic, while Lucian reflects on the truth. Felicia lived a hidden life as that very demon. The unnamed Silver Knight wipes blood from a fresh cut on his neck, stunned that he was nearly decapitated. He stands tall, admitting he made a grave mistake by looking down on someone with such sharp fangs. His eye begins to glow with an intense blue light as he formally accepts her as a true enemy worthy of his full strength. The two clash again in a violent explosion of mana that sends shockwaves through the entire warehouse. Felicia's face is a mask of shock. She realizes that despite her skill, this knight is on a completely different level. High above, Raymond and another knight watch the duel, assessing the power being unleashed. Raymond remains stoic, his eyes fixed on the display of martial prowess below. Felicia stands ready in the dim light, a silhouette of defiance against a superior foe. She resolves to give everything she has to this final attack, determined to leave the field with no regrets. Raymond notes how impressive it is that the young master remains so calm while facing such lethal intent head-on. The duel reaches its peak in the center of the dark, cavernous room. Their spirits collide in a brilliant flash of blue and violet energy. Their blades lock together, both warriors pouring every ounce of their strength into the struggle. Logran suddenly screams at the top of his lungs, begging them both to stop before everything is destroyed. The massive buildup of energy finally bursts, forcing both combatants to leap back. Lucian Valdec steps into the center of the hall, his presence alone commanding the attention of everyone present. He coldly declares that he will not allow any more bloodshed tonight. The unnamed Silver Knight protests, shouting that letting the girl live could be a fatal mistake for House Valdec. Lucian turns a piercing gaze on him, reminding the knight exactly who holds the authority here. He raises a hand to quell the argument, acknowledging the risk but insisting that further violence will only lead to more death. Lucian looks directly at Felicia, formally introducing himself as the third young master of House Valdec. He makes her an offer. They will settle this with a duel of their own, just the two of them. But if he wins, she must lay down her weapon and surrender to him completely. Felicia is stunned that the young master just proposed a duel. Logran bellows at her to stop hesitating and just take the deal. He points a finger, screaming that his own safety is the only priority. He gestures to the bodies on the floor, complaining about the hardship he had to endure. He demands she prove she's actually useful, unlike the dead guards. A sharp command tells him to shut his mouth. Lucian stands his ground, telling his brother he has no right to insult people who died for him. With a cold stare, he warns Logran he'll cut out his tongue if he keeps talking. He faces the room and takes full responsibility for everything about to happen. Raymond and the other knights watch the confrontation unfold. Lucian stakes his name on the match and tells Felicia to draw her sword. The training hall falls silent as the duel begins. The Silver Knight asks Raymond if he's really just going to let this happen. He remembers how Felicia managed to wound him earlier in the day. The maid stands ready, her posture showing she's never had formal training. Despite that, her raw talent and keen eyes make her a natural with a blade. Lucian holds his sword, but the knights are convinced he's outmatched. They respect his boldness, but they don't think his skill can bridge the gap. Raymond keeps a close watch on the young master. He tells the other knight to hold back and just observe for a moment. He thinks back to the moment Lucian borrowed his sword. He's still surprised Lucian knew exactly what he felt while fighting the girl. The Silver Knight looks confused by the veteran's reaction. Raymond wants to see exactly what the young master is planning. Felicia realizes Lucian is a completely different breed of noble. He even went as far as to disguise himself to inspect Logran's forces. Now he's personally stepping up for a duel that shouldn't even be happening. She's sure of one thing, though he's absolutely no match for her. She gives a small nod, appreciating the opportunity he's giving her. She vows that if he manages to win, she'll leave the estate for good. Lucian counters that if he wins, she's coming with him to Helheim. The two face off at opposite ends of the training hall. Felicia draws her sword, her expression hardening. Lucian raises his blade, eyes locked on his opponent. Felicia decides to finish it in one strike to keep from hurting him too badly. She launches forward like a bullet. She comes down with a heavy overhead slash. Her eyes go wide as she realizes something is wrong. Lucian shifts his weight and blocks the strike cleanly. Sparks fly as their blades grind together. She pivots instantly for a low follow-up attack. She's baffled his physical speed is clearly lower, yet he's anticipating every move. Their blades grind together as Felicia tries to force her way through his guard. Lucian effortlessly pushes her back, his movements almost hauntingly familiar to her. He knows she's running on fumes after her earlier clash with the Black Lions. Felicia is baffled, unable to comprehend how she's being overwhelmed by someone she considered weak. In a past life, their time together was short, but it left a lasting mark on him. He recalls how they spent many days clashing swords in a different time and place. Through those matches, he studied her habits until her style became his own. He strikes with the confidence of someone who knows her rhythm better than she does, disarming her in an instant. Raymond and the other knights can only watch the upset in stunned silence. The blade spins high into the air, reflecting the dim light of the training hall. Logran's jaw drops as he trembles in fear, watching his best guard fall. Lucian remembers how Felicia was the one who taught him the fundamentals of the blade. Even with the knowledge they might be on opposite sides one day, she was a generous mentor. The clatter of the sword hitting the floor signals the end of the match. He stands over her, his victory leaving the entire room breathless. Felicia gasps for air, the tip of a blade resting inches from her throat. Lucian thinks to himself that this is just the first step in repaying the debt he owes her.